Hello and welcome to Chicory's Travels. We're Sean and Julie, and one of the things we really love doing is RV shows where we present seminars. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we're unable to do them this winter. So what we've decided to do is record our show series here on YouTube. So after you watch this video, if you'd like, go to the playlist Show Seminars, is that right? And you can see all of the seminar series, and you can see all of the videos that we have recorded so far, and that's where our future seminar videos will be as well. In this video, we are going to talk about basic tips for performing routine maintenance on your RV systems, as well as some basic care. And the important thing to know is that taking proper precautions with your RV are going to help avoid costly mistakes down the road. So we're going to cover some useful habits and correct procedures for some preventive maintenance things that anyone can do. I mean, anyone, even me. So these things will be water systems, battery care, your holding tanks, your water system, and the roof for trouble-free operation.
So each RV tech is responsible for 658 RVs on the road. And that's probably a little low because this is 2018 data. And so it's probably a bigger spread now. So that means a couple of things for RVers. Long waits to get your RV serviced, because if one person's responsible for 658 RVs and let's say 20% of them have a problem, you're going to be waiting a long time. And the second is money, because supply and demand, there's going to be higher labor rates charged for working on your RV. So that could not only hurt your wallet, but hurt your vacation. And you may not even get to go on your vacation because your RV is so far behind in line. So there's a lot of simple things you can do yourself, and that's what we're going to cover.
The first thing to know when you buy an RV is you are going to get a pack of manuals. That's if you buy new. If you buy used, you may or may not get these manuals, but you're going to want to find them if the previous owner didn't give them to you. And you can typically find them online by Googling the system. Now, the reason why I say the system and not necessarily the RV, and this is the reason why you have all these manuals, is because like the outside part, the shell was made by whoever made your RV. For us, it's Northwood Manufacturing, who makes the Arctic Fox. You might be Jayco, you might be Winnebago, but the refrigerator is for someone else. The microwave is someone else. The stairs to get into your RV are someone else. Your leveling jacks are somewhere else. You see where I'm going with this? There are a lot of different manufacturers that come together to make all the different parts and pieces of the RV, and each one has its own owner's manual. So what we recommend you do is look at those owner's manuals for the part that talks about preventive maintenance, because every one of them will have some type of schedule that tells you what items need to be performed. And then what we did is we went ahead and put them in like a Google Sheets or a spreadsheet. There's even some apps now that you can do it. And it just helps give you a reminder of when those items need to be performed. You don't have to keep them by system anymore. You could put them by due date, and it'll just help you stay on top of all your preventive maintenance, because the time definitely gets away from you.
So the first system we'll talk about is my favorite, and that's the batteries and electronics in general. And for batteries, they come in all different shapes and sizes and makes. And you can have flooded lead acid batteries, AGM batteries, or lithium batteries. These are the most common ones that you'll find. They all require different types of preventive maintenance to get the most energy from them over the lifespan of the battery. And if you fail to do this maintenance regularly, it will quickly diminish the capacity of those batteries. So a maintenance-free battery or a lithium eliminates most of the preventive maintenance that you'll have to do and will give you less battery anxiety, we call it. It will make trouble-free battery operation a lot easier. So a couple of things that you need to do if you have a lead acid battery is you need to keep the terminals clean, for one. You need to check those connections. And this is for any battery, really. You want to keep those connections, make sure they're tight. We always check ours before and after we are going on a trip to make sure that those connections stay snug. And then you also want to, if you have a flooded lead acid battery, you have to check those water levels, and you have to check them every month. If the water level starts to drop below those plates in the battery, you have irrecoverable damage to your battery, and you will quickly lose the energy carrying capacity of those batteries. And we switched to lithium batteries a couple years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago. And we did that for a couple of reasons. Number one is that they are maintenance free. I was terrible at keeping up with the flooded lead acid batteries. So our batteries were dying 2 or 3 years into their life. And people that really take care of them can make them last a lot longer. The other reason we switched is because they're lighter. They're only, less than 30 pounds for a 100 amp hour battery. And they last longer. They're actually, if you do the math, they're a big investment up front, but they're cheaper per amp hour over the life of the batteries. And then they charge faster. So those are some of the reasons we went with lithium battery. It's certainly worked out good for us.
Yeah, and an important thing to know about those batteries too, especially if you're a recreational RVer, is that's funny, recreational RV or recreational vehicle. But basically what I mean is someone who puts your RV in storage and you're not living in it and using it all the time, it's easy to forget about those batteries, especially if you don't store it at home and you have it in a storage lot. And they have a self-discharge rate, so you could get there and your batteries could be dead. That also damages the battery when it is completely discharged like that. But then another problem is you not checking the water levels and things like that because it's just sitting there.
Yeah, because even if you're not using it, you still have to check those water levels. So if it's parked somewhere for months, every month, you still have to go and check those and make sure it's maintaining its charge because you don't want it to die. Where with a lithium battery, you don't really have to do that. As long as you charge it up at the beginning of winter, it should be good to go when you go to check on it. The next systems we're going to talk about are generators. And as you can see here in this picture, generators also come in different makes, models, sizes, and they all have different preventive maintenance. They can also run on gas, propane, or diesel, which also changes the preventive maintenance requirements. And there's two main types that you see here. One, like this green Cummins Onan generator, is an onboard generator. And then the Honda is a portable generator. The one thing I will say about portable generators is you don't want to get what they call a contractor grade generator. A lot of campgrounds now are not even allowing those. And so they're just awfully loud. And if you get an inverted portable generator like this Honda here, or one of the brands that are similar, you won't have to, it'll be inverted power, so you'll get a steady flow of electricity out of it, and it's very quiet compared to those contractor grade generators. So the first thing I'll say about generator preventive maintenance is the best thing for a generator is to exercise it. You want to always make sure that you're running your generator every month, even if you don't need it, under 50% load for like 1 hour. This keeps all the fluids and everything running through that generator. And all the manufacturers that we've read about, they say that is the #1 thing you want to do. So if you're in the market for a used RV and it has an onboard generator and it has low hours, that's not necessarily a good thing. Make sure you're running your generator. And then there are a couple of other guidelines that you want to follow. And like we said in those books, there will be one for the generator. And you want to follow the preventive maintenance schedule on that the manufacturer recommends for that generator. So in this slide here, you'll see that that is the preventive maintenance schedule for the Onan generator that we had in our previous RV. And so it's just basic things, and it tells you the hours at which you need to do it. And then on the other side of the slide, you see there's a picture of a kit with filters and things like that. And you can buy most of these from Amazon or from the actual manufacturer. They call it like a PM kit or a preventive maintenance kit. And then usually all you have to do is buy the oil that goes along with it. But you can get these for like $40. And if you take it somewhere to get this generator maintenance done, it will be anywhere from $150 to $250 to do it. And just go on YouTube, watch a video that's showing the preventive maintenance on your particular generator, buy the kit and get out there and do it. And it takes an hour of your time and definitely saves in your pocket.
So the next thing we want to talk about is your RV water systems. And I have a couple photos here to kind of show you different ways to filter your water, because that's really the first key for your water systems, is to filter the water before it gets in your RV. And one of the reasons for that is obviously things like taste and smell of the drinking water. But a bigger reason, really, because some people will say, well, I just have one of those tabletop water filters, or I just use bottled water. That's fine, but you still need to filter your water for silt and sediment. We learned this lesson the hard way, because if the silt and sediment gets into your RV, and it definitely can do that from just the water spigot at the campground or other places where you might be filling it up if you're dry camping, and it varies around the country about how much silt and sediment is in the water. But if it gets into your water lines, and then it'll start to clog them up inside. And they have these little water, what are they called? Registers, or? Well, they're like little mini filters inside of your RV now. And they're in the most inconvenient place to get them. Like basically you have to like dislocate a shoulder and get up under the counter or something if your sink in the bathroom is clogged because of that. Sean had to do that once.
Flow restrictors.
Flow restrictors, thank you. So Sean had to do that once and get in there and pull it out. And he could look in that little, it looks like just a little mini screen, like about this big, and it was like little pieces of sand in there.
Yeah.
And it can happen at several different places around the RV, and it's a hassle. So the easiest thing to do is to prevent it, right? So if you look at this image, you'll see three different options here. The first one is probably the most common. People buy these little blue filters, inline filters that go along with their hose. This first one is a problem. You should never hook it up on the RV end. So I should put a big red X over that photo to let you know that is not where, because what happens is it pulls down on that and it can damage that inlet valve. What you want to do is, if you use that, hook it up over on the faucet end like this last image. But another problem with this first one is that these filters usually have a pretty big filter. So what I mean by that is it lets a lot of stuff through. The unit of measurement that they use is called a micron. And you can get filters down to 1 micron. Most of these, though, are up to 20 microns. And so they are letting in all kinds of stuff, and most all silt and sediment. This is not going to catch a whole lot of stuff. So what other people have, and these types of things, like this picture in the image, I mean, this image in the second one, you can see this one's placed outside, but you can actually also get these mounted up into your water bay. And more RVs, especially the higher end one, higher end fifth wheels and motorhomes, are coming with these types of things already mounted. And they come in 2-stage like this one, or 3-stage. And the great thing about that is you can start with the first one that is a larger micron, so usually a 5 micron, and that'll catch the big pieces. And then you go down to a 1 micron, which gets the smaller pieces. And the 3-stage ones also typically have like a separate carbon water filter, which is affecting the taste and smell of the water. And then the last one is a new product. It's made by the same company as the middle one. If you can see that name, it's called clear 2O. So clear, the number 2, and then O, the letter O. And this is an innovative product that they have because it basically has the thing that you see on the left, the far left there, just an inline filter, but theirs is 5 micron. And then they have a larger filter that goes over it that has a carbon and filter, and I think maybe even 1 micron in there.
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so we'll put in the notes down below what the actual micron of that is, but we'll also put a link to an interview that Sean did on his Beyond the Wheel podcast with the Clear 2O company that gives you all the details about their varying options.
And also water filtration in general is covered in that podcast.
Yeah. And, but we have been trying out this green one down on the end for a while now after we were using a 3-stage filter that really just took up a lot of space, and we're very happy with it.
Yeah. And it's, it's very small, and you can actually take it apart and clean the filter so that it lasts a lot longer than just a disposable filter.
Now, there is one problem with this image here on the right. One piece is missing, and I'm going to show you that in the next slide. So this is a water pressure regulator, and this is a large water pressure regulator that you can actually adjust. There's a little arrow there you see at the top, and you take a flathead screwdriver and you adjust it. You can actually buy a smaller one, which is what we use now, a small brass one that it lasts a little longer. Like this is also brass than a plastic, but it just hooks between the water spigot and then your water filter. So you want to have this water pressure regulator. The reason why is the recommended water pressure is 40 to 50 PSI, and definitely never exceeding 60. And unfortunately, the water that comes out of some of these spigots is a lot more than that. And even if you're filling up at home before you go boondocking, a lot of times your water faucets at home might be more than that, the exterior ones. So you want to restrict that flow so that you don't damage the lines in your RV.
So even if you're using water filtration and your city water, you're still going to want to disinfect or sanitize your freshwater tank when you're periodically, I would say. We do ours about twice a year. And you want to use bleach and water. And I think the mixture is, we'll put it down in the show notes for sure, but I think it's 1 ounce of bleach for every 15 gallons of water that your freshwater tank holds. And so what you do is you drain your freshwater tank, you put the bleach in there, and then you fill up the rest of your water, your freshwater tank, and open up your faucets. And when you can smell that bleach coming out of those faucets, you know the water is through the lines, and you can shut the water off, and then you just let it sit there for 12 to 24 hours. After that, you can drain the freshwater tank and fill it up again, open up your faucets and make sure that that bleach smell goes away. They say then it's good to use. I always drain my freshwater tank one more time and then fill it back up if we're going on a trip somewhere to use it. So you definitely want to do that. If the water is just sitting in there, even though it was filtered very good before it went in there, the stagnant water tends to build up nasty stuff, and it's going to also smell. So you just want to keep your water tank sanitized.
And just a final note on that, like talking about water filtration and sanitizing your fresh water tank. I know a lot of people do bottled water, and they say, does anyone actually drink from their RV water? We do. We do it when we're boondocking. We are drinking from the tank because we have kept it sanitized. And when we're on city water with our filtration, we feel perfectly comfortable with drinking that water.
Yeah, lots of it we drink too. So it's not like sparingly, we drink it all the time.
So the last thing about water tanks is the nasty one, right? The holding tanks. And actually you have 2 holding tanks. I'm sure you know that. A gray wastewater tank, which is the water from your sinks and your shower. And then you have the black tank, which is from the toilet. But just one little note, that gray tank can be stinky too. So I know a lot of people like this says odor-free black tank, but the gray tank can get stinky too. But here's just a few tips on how to maintain those tanks so that they're smelling fresh, I guess, and not making your camper stinky. So the first thing is water is your friend, especially with the black tank. Water is your friend. You want to have a lot of water in there. But even for us, we do the same thing with the gray tank. And so the first tip is to, when you get, if you're at a campground with full hookups and you hook up your sewer hose right away, don't open the valves. We actually leave the gray and black closed. You can leave the gray opened if you want, but we just prefer to keep it closed because that way, when we release that valve, there's plenty of water to come rushing out, and it just helps to clean out things a little bit more, because even like that soap, you know, soap scum in the shower, like it can build up. So you definitely want to have that, and that gravity kind of helps a little bit more if you have a lot of water in there to go. The black tank though, mandatory that you never leave that tank open, that valve open, even when you're at full hookup, because the problem is the liquids are going to come out and the solids are going to build up, and you're going to have a lot of problems in the future. So water's your friend. Keep the valve closed, let it fill up, and then when you're ready to leave, or when it's getting full, I don't even wait for it to be full. I usually, if I have full hookups, I'll do about 3/4 and go ahead and drain the tanks then. Now, a lot of the newer RVs are coming with something you see in this top left image. You got your freshwater connection on the left, but over on the right, you have something called a back flush valve. And what this does is it allows you to take a separate hose. So we'll put a splitter down on the end of the water spigot at the campground, and you just drive a separate hose to that, and it allows you to pump water directly into your black tank. And it's usually at a pretty good amount of flow. So it's kind of spraying off the sides a little bit. And then it's allowing you to add more water. So what I do is I go ahead and close that valve and then run some water into there after I've flushed the tank. And it's just adding more water into it. And then I'll pull the valve and then let it kind of rinse out again. And I might do that a couple of times just to make sure that the water's flowing clear. So this bottom left photo here, you can see that water's running clear. It's called black tank for a reason. It doesn't run clear the first time, but after you've flushed it out, hopefully that's what you're seeing. The photo on the top right is if you don't have one of those, if you have maybe a pop-up camper might not have it, or if you have buying one that's used and it's a little bit older before people started installing that back flush. You can buy one of these for like 10 bucks. And it basically is the same concept. You put the hose into the top there, you keep that valve there up on the top right closed, and it pushes water up into your black tank and it allows it to flush out. And then when you're ready, you just pull that valve and it comes on out. And then the last thing that I do is one last time I'm closing the valve and then I'm just adding a little bit more water into the tank so that the first time you use it, there is water in there. And people ask how much. That depends on the size of your tank. It's kind of trial and error. For us, we have a pretty large tank, so I do 1 minute and I just kind of time it on my watch, and when it's 1 minute, I turn it off. And I've just played around with that by looking at the little gauges inside the RV. And then I'll go inside the RV, and this is where some people might buy those little, they look kind of like Tide Pods, but they're made for camper black tanks. It's like chemicals, and they drop them in there. I used to do that, but then I got tired of having to go to a camping store or go on Amazon or something and buy those specifically. So now what I do is just something that I can pick up at the gas station. I'm not the gas station, the grocery store. When I go to the grocery store and I'm buying my laundry detergent, my dish detergent, I get an extra thing of dish detergent that I can keep underneath the bathroom sink. And then I also buy some liquid water softener if they have it. I usually get the Calgon liquid water softener. If they don't have that, you can also use the borax powdered water softener. And what I do is I just put a cap full of the water softener. And then also I use that same cap and put in the dish soap and make a cap full of that. And then I just flush it down. And that substitutes for those little pockets, and I have never had a problem.
No, the biggest thing though, like Julie said, is the water, because you don't want the dreaded poop pyramid building up in your tank, and then you have to get that tank replaced, when just using plenty of water will prevent that from happening 99% of the time.
And we'll include a link in the description below to another video that we did that just is only on that process. We actually show that process.
The next thing is the water heater preventive maintenance, and there's different types of water heaters. You could have an Atwood, you could have a Suburban. We're talking about the water heaters with tanks. The tankless systems like the Truma or things like that are going to be a completely different type of preventive maintenance. So make sure you look at the manual for your water heater and follow the preventive maintenance schedule in there. One thing that's common with the water heaters with the tanks is flushing that water heater. And we do that like once a quarter. And we now have a water heater with an anode rod in it. And that usually about twice a year, we have to change that anode rod. So it's real easy to flush that water heater. The best thing to do, or the most important thing to do, I should say, is make sure you turn the water heater off in plenty of time before you're going to flush it, and maybe even run the hot water in your RV for a while to get that water so it's not so hot, because when you go to flush it, you're going to get wet and you don't want to get burned. Also, when you take that cover off to flush your water heater, you're going to want to inspect the inside of it. So like where the burner orifice is, you want to check there's usually a porcelain electrode. If that's cracked, that needs to be changed. You need to make sure there's no critters making a home anywhere in there, and clean that all out. And one thing that will help prevent that is they make a fine mesh screen that you see in this slide, where you can put on that outside vent, and that will keep the bees and bugs from getting in there. But the main thing to do is flush that water heater, and again, follow the instructions in your manual to do that. It's pretty easy, especially after you do it a couple times. It's no problem at all. And make sure you're changing that anode rod, because that is helping keep that tank from corroding and getting a lot of mineral buildup in it. The other thing that you need to check on the outside is the furnace. And there's a couple of things with this. One is you need to look in those vent tubes that are on there, and those bees love making homes in there. And we've seen it where bees have started in there and then they get inside the RV and it's just a mess. So even investing in those fine mesh screens for your furnace will help prevent insects from making a home in there. And then you can take the screws off of the outside cover and pull that off. And one of the things you want to check is make sure there's no buildup on those connections where the wires connect. And if there are, you can just take a pencil eraser usually and clean those off, and it will work great. The other thing you want to do is check to make sure there's no soot buildup around those vents, because that indicates you have a problem with your furnace and you're going to want to get it checked out by a certified RV tech. But again, you should have a maintenance manual for this, and you can keep up with the preventive maintenance and make sure that you're not increasing the chances of having a failure due to lack of preventive maintenance.
So Sean talked about insects. So I want to talk about some other insects too, real quick. Because one of the problems is, I don't know, it seems like whenever we're somewhere hot, like in the summertime, like ants want air conditioning too or something, because they like to try to come into the RV. So these are just a few tips that I've picked up along the way from other RVers on how to keep the ants out. And ever since I've used this process I'm about to explain to you, it has worked really well for me. But the places that the ants get in are things like these two images in the middle here, where they can, they have a pathway into the RV. So like your water hose is touching the ground and coming up into the RV, your landing gear, your stabilizer jacks, they're touching the ground, and then there's a path for them to come up into the RV. So the first thing I do when we get to a campground is I'll put on a pair of gloves, because I'm going to do the sewer connection, right? But before I do that, I'll grab some of this ant gel. So it looks like a little tube of toothpaste, but it's ant gel. You can use any brand. And I just put a little bit on my fingertips. And then what I do is I go around underneath the RV, right at the top of where you see that hose, and put just a little bit of that for a barrier. And I'll do the same thing on each of the landing gear. And the reason is I'm hoping as the ants come marching up that they make a U-turn when they get to that, or if not, they pick up some poison and they die when they get inside the RV, so that you don't have a problem with ants. And then the other thing that I do is I will use a little bit of diatomaceous earth. And this is actually food grade. You could eat it. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is food grade. And so I like this because it's not going to hurt like anybody's pet if they're out wandering around and deciding to eat the grass near my RV. And what I do is I just go around the RV pad and I sprinkle just up close to the RV. And then that also just creates another barrier for the ants.
One thing we would like for you to comment on, if you have any suggestions, is one time we got those Asian beetles in our RV that look like little ladybugs. And we found those things for probably months afterwards, still alive in our RV. So if you have any suggestions on how to get rid of those, please add it in the comments. And we would be grateful for any advice on that for next time it happens to us. The next item is your roof, and we have a rubber roof. So what we do is we get up there twice a year and we use an environmentally friendly cleaner like Simple Green, mix it according to the directions, and we get up on the roof with a bucket and a very soft bristled brush, and we just scrub the roof and rinse it off. And then we'll inspect all the seals up there to make sure that everything is still sealed. None of that stuff is cracking. If there is, we'll use some, what is that stuff called? The stuff that you use, blanking on Dicor. You use some Dicor roof sealant up there and reseal everything. And then also if there's any little tears starting to happen in that rubber, you can seal those as well. But one thing you don't want is a water leak. So doing this twice a year is very important. And you can even, if depending on what you have up there, you know, solar panels, things like that, you can kind of clean underneath those as well. But twice a year is typically enough to keep that roof looking fairly good. In this picture here, you have a picture of our old fifth wheel, our Cyclone, and we had this for, this is picture, we've probably already had it 4 years, and the roof still looks pretty good just from doing that simple maintenance. The next thing is the tires, and probably the main thing that you need to do with your tires is to maintain the proper air pressure in the RV tires. That will enhance tread life and overall performance. And you can get a tire pressure monitoring system that we use, and it has saved us a few times with when a tire was going flat, we were able to stop before the tire shredded. And if you've ever seen an RV where the tire shredded and broke apart, it just tears up the side of your RV. So we recommend a tire pressure monitoring system. We'll put a link in the description to our friends at Techno RV that sell RV tire pressure monitors that they've used themselves and trust them. And we haven't gone wrong with using the tire pressure monitoring system that they sell. Always check your tire pressures at least once a month when storing your RV. And then check them whenever you're on a trip. Make sure you're checking those pressures. Hot and cold air will change the pressure in your tires. So you want to make sure and make sure you have the right pressure. Always let your tires cool before taking the pressure reading. You don't want to do it on the hot tire. And then for every 1 PSI that a tire is underinflated, you lose 20 to 30 pounds of cargo carrying capacity. So imagine if you have a triple axle and all those tires are 5 pounds low, you are definitely losing a lot of carrying capacity inside your RV. And most of us are right on the edge of being full to the max anyway. So you want to make sure and keep the right pressure for your tires. Then you want to check the sidewalls for cracking, and never use the sidewall dressing on your tires. If you look at any tire manufacturer, they always say don't use that stuff. Every car or RV or boat trailer that you buy, those tires are nice and shiny. Just let that stuff wear off and don't apply it again. Nobody's really excited about looking at your tires for shininess anyway when you have a nice RV and they would rather see the RV. Look for worn tires. They usually have a tread wear indicator on them. And when it gets below that, it's time to change those tires, even if you haven't had them very long. And then really look at your tires as much as possible, because you never know when something's going to start to go wrong with those tires. And in this slide, we have a picture of me changing a tire on the side of I-20 when we had a tire start to go flat, and our TPMS, tire pressure management system, let us know, and the tire didn't fall apart, but it had a pretty good split in it, and it let us know right away. So make sure you keep on top of your tires.
And we have more information about everything that we talked about here. Actually, I think we have a specific article and maybe even video for. So if you go to chicories-travels.com/show, you will see all the videos that we've done so far and related blog posts with more detailed information. And then we also have a couple of books. Sean has one specifically on RV water systems maintenance, and we have one on full-time RV finance. And we even have a course now, full-time RV finance. And we'll put the links to all of this also in the description below. So thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you found this information helpful.
And this is a way shortened version of our full seminar. Usually this one goes over an hour because there's so much detail. So we really had to abbreviate it for YouTube.
Yeah.
So come see us if we're at a show near you.
Yeah. And until we see you in person, safe travels.